All right, my friends, welcome back. It's time for a new reaction video. This week it is the 2004 Scion XA and XB. I want to thank one of my viewers who recommended the first generation XB, and I want to thank our friends over at the channel Hondata97 because they're the ones that uploaded this. I found that Motorweek has one where they actually do the Nissan Cube, the second generation, I believe it is, XB, and the Kia rat car. I'm probably going to do that one in the near future because I like the Cube. Anyway, on with this one because a brand that didn't make it, but was really kind of cool. I can't wait to see what they say about it. So as always, grab a beverage of choice. We do have some coffee here this morning. Make yourself comfortable and let's take a little trip down memory lane just 20 short years ago. See what Motorweek said about this when it was brand new.
If you want plenty of stress, try designing cars for the youngest drivers. Impressing the 16 to 25-year-old buyer has cost many auto executives more than a night's sleep. But the suits at Toyota believe they've cracked the automotive code to Generation Y with their new Scion brand subcompacts. But does Scion really have what young drivers want? Designed to capture today's youth, the 2004 Scion XA and its boxy-shaped counterpart Scion XB are the first two models of this radical new Toyota brand. However, these well-built, highly functional, and affordable cars may find some rather unexpected markets. Think Honda Element. So it's hard to say just who will fall for these Gen Y mobiles. The XA, derived from the Japanese IST, is a 5-door subcompact similar in concept to the larger Toyota Matrix. Its simple lines, exaggerated wheel arches, wedge-shaped nose, and straight roofline combine for a nicely sporty look. The angular...
Okay, so before they go on, I'm glad they did mention these come straight from Japan. I mean, with some modifications for our market, of course. But, you know, when they talk about how revolutionary this thing is, no, this is just the kind of stuff they have over there that's interesting to begin with. When these two were introduced, I liked the XA a lot more. XB didn't really do it for me. And if you recall, I did end up later, I don't remember when it was exactly, 2007, so a few years later, I did end up with a Versa. And so this style here, 5-door hatchback that's a little, you know, angled and slopey, this is me. I love it. I love it. We'll talk about the XB styling in a minute. But it's interesting, they want to appeal to a younger generation, and in many ways they did, but also these ended up becoming, as I recall anyway, really popular with the older crowd who wanted reliable and cheap, efficient, moving stuff around. Like you can imagine somebody who's, you know, got to put a walker in the back or something like that and just throw it in. Love the styling on this thing. I think the front is a little busy, but overall, this is like a micro van. I love it.
The rear portions reveal the XA's wide hatch for easy cargo access. Inside the XA, metal tone trim and texture-treated doors, dash, and seats nicely accentuate the cabin. A center-mounted gauge cluster high on the dash with stylized black-on-white faces also drew attention, if not raves. The 5-seater offers supportive front sport buckets and a 60/40 split-fold rear seat for a trim threesome. Fold the seats in the cargo area allows 32.8 cubic feet. Also a derivative.
Okay, not overwhelming space. You know, so okay, let's back up here for a second. Cargo space was okay. I mean, it's a tiny car, so you lay down the seats and you get 32. That's okay. That's not outrageous amazing. But did you see how much space was in that back seat? When that lanky dude got in there, he wasn't even close to the front seats, and his head wasn't close up here. So really, really good packaging. Front seat, I generally don't have a problem with it. I think everything is kind of handsome. I think the plastics look surprisingly rich for the price point they're at, right? I think everything just looks, well, it looks like what you expect and what made the Japanese popular. Just a relatively simple, high quality interior. But I absolutely despise the center speedometer. And it gets two things wrong, in my opinion. First off, is it's over there. Why? I mean, I know this was popular for a while. Many did it and others do it, but you just end up with a blank piece of plastic in front of you, and they didn't do anything with it. It just rose up to the windscreen. So why move it over there? This is not a radio where the passenger might need it. Keep it in front of you. That was different for the being just for the sake of being different. And I don't think it worked. And I actually don't agree that looking like this is faster than glancing down. Also, I hate black on white gauges. Talked about it before. I don't care. It just looks cheap to me.
Of a Japanese model, the BB, the Scion XB poses a more innovative and aggressive stance than the XA. The XB has a short van-like nose, ruler straight sides, and a tall cabin. And unique to its style and function, a lowered suspension that makes it look more like a hovercraft on 15-inch wheels. Expectedly roomier.
Okay, before they go on to the interior. So when this car was new, I didn't really like this one. There's no style to it, right? And we are talking about something that's 20 years ago. So 20 years ago, I'll be surprised to know I was 20 years younger. And the XA was more appealing to me. This one made more value sense because you just got more space. If what you're buying is space. But I'm going to tell you what, to my eyes, and when you have a channel where you talk about dorky 80s and Japanese and 90s cars, this one really, I have appreciated it more and more and more as time has gone by. I love the exterior styling. I love the fact that the hood's about this long and it's perfectly flat, and these little thin nose, and then just a box. I mean, the kind of thing a freezer would come in. It's just, if you want car, the essence of car, there's a small engine up there and the rest of it is passenger space, and we're not going to overly style it and take away from shoulder room and hip room and headroom and everything else. We're just going to give you a box. Love it.
Than the XA, the XB's interior adds most of the same sporty shapes and styles to its square practicality. All Scions come well equipped, including air, power windows, locks and mirrors, a first aid kit, and a Pioneer MP3 and satellite-capable CD stereo. The radio head is large and easy to use, as are the rotary climate controls below. The XB's front sport seats are tall and fairly broad, while the 60/40 rear seats again allow room for two comfortably and three in a pinch. Folded, a generous 43.4 cubic feet of cargo area is possible. However, our car's cargo space was limited by the optional sound package and its huge bazooka tube subwoofer. Fortunately, it can be removed in a few minutes.
Okay. Interesting. Seats lowered. That thing had about 10 cubic feet more cargo space, I guess. So that would be about 33% more. And that's what you're getting with, I think it's a little bit longer, but more boxy. There's nothing not to like here. Again, center gauge, I'm not sure why, but the whole dash in the XB overall just looks a lot nicer than the XBs. I think it just looks a little bit more rich. And what I was looking for is when they were playing on the dashboard, I was looking for flexing and movement, something that says they cheapened out on it, and I didn't really see it. Maybe in the radio. Nicely done. Really, really nicely done. As for that stupid bazooka subwoofer, okay, this was aimed for a younger crowd, and part of how they marketed the Scion was to partner with little known bands that they thought were going to become big. I think they actually sold Scion CDs, if I remember correctly. I did a history of Scion and what the heck happened to them years ago, but you'll forgive me. I don't remember everything all the time. Love the XB now. Absolutely do. Let's see what they say about the overwhelming horsepower.
But the oh-so-opposite Scion models are actually twins at heart, or triplets if you will, since they share most of their front-drive mechanicals with the Toyota Echo. And that heart is a 1.5-liter twin-cam, 16-valve, 4-cylinder engine. It pumps out a modest 108 horsepower and 105 pound-feet of torque. Transmission choices are a 5-speed manual or our test car's 4-speed automatic. In a straight line, the XA and XB turned in similar numbers. The wedge-shaped XA clocked 0 to 60 in 10.8 seconds and ran the quarter mile in 18.2 seconds at 77 miles per hour. The rectangular XB took 11.5 seconds to jog from 0 to 60, with the quarter mile running 18.5 seconds at 74 miles per hour. Both vehicles are quick off the line, but power is lost in later gears. And though the engines are the same, the XA was much quieter under full throttle. The XA and XB are supported by much the same independent suspension setup, with McPherson struts in the front and a torsion beam axle in the rear. But despite sharing the design, we found a fair bit of difference in handling. The XA had slower turn-in, but really stayed planted through each turn. Conversely, the XB had a more precise turn-in that made for a sportier drive. But the XB has a taller roll center, so we appreciated the safeguard of its standard electronic stability control. An available front strut tower brace adds body stiffness and even more handling response. Front ventilated disc brakes with rear drums stop the XA and XB in an equal 136 feet from 60 to 0. ABS is standard, as is solid performance.
Okay, what to say there? Generally speaking, I would say underwhelming, but that's being slightly unfair. These are the most economy of economy cars for its time, I think. 10.8 seconds, 11 point something seconds, 0 to 60. That's slow. It's not horrific, but that's a little slow. But if you think about, these cars are meant for younger people who are probably more urban, living in a city. Getting stoplight to stoplight is probably the bigger concern. So I don't think that was much of an issue. The handling, interesting. The XB wasn't the more nimble of the two, at least initially. That this felt sportier, the XB did, although it had a higher roll center. Interesting what they're prioritizing here. The braking's not good. I mean, it's not horrific, but it's not good. And it's interesting how well equipped these things were, because although they're small and although they were appealing to younger people, they weren't completely stripped, right? They talked earlier, it had air and it had power windows and stability control, standard stability control. This was not a stripped out vehicle. This was actually relatively well equipped. I don't remember why I didn't get one back in the day, why I ended up with my Versa, but I think part of the reason was these were more expensive because there was more standard equipment on them. When I got my Nissan, it had a radio. That was about it. I had power windows, I think.
So not only are the two Scions well equipped, numerous dealer options are available. Dedicated showrooms within Toyota dealerships will feature plasma screen internet kiosks and other displays to let buyers express their personalities. And though our Scion automatics aren't exactly performance icons, they are economical. EPA estimates peg the XA at 31 city and 37 highway, and the XB rakes in 30 city and 34 highway. Prices for the Scions are equally thrifty. The XA starts at $13,765. Our tester tacked on $2,568 for the subwoofer, sport package, and a few other extras. Total $16,333. The XB will fetch a base of $14,965. And our tester with preferred and sport packages, light package, and subwoofer topped out at $17,288. Scion debuted in California in June with encouraging sales both in volume and in buyer age. Now Scion will reach the South, Southeast, and East Coast by February of next year, so keep your eyes peeled. By then, we may have a better idea if the Scion brand will really start a youthquake at Toyota or just add to their impressive variety of quality vehicles. And given their Korean fighter prices, Scion is likely to be a success no matter how or what they look like.
Interesting. So there's your reason. I mean, the XB in 2004 started at $15,000 before you start adding anything onto it. I paid less than that for my Versa 3 or 4 years later. That's why. Now my Versa was much less well equipped, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, while they say those are Korean fighter pricing, I'm going to go out here and say these were a little overpriced. Not much, but at this end of the spectrum, it matters. I don't doubt their high quality. I don't question the standard equipment they've got, but you end up with prices that just feel like, that just all strikes me as a little high for something with 108 horsepower. Now, I have no problem with the engine, but I do know, I've known people who've owned each of these, but I worked with a lady who had the XB, and they can say what they want to about the gas mileage on the highway. The problem is this little car is shaped like a brick, and the engine doesn't have a lot of power. And when she took highway trips, that little thing was working hard to keep up with traffic. And I don't know. I don't remember how long she kept it. She loved it, but I don't remember it getting really good gas mileage on the interstate. So back in the day, I liked the wedgy one. I thought it was far cooler and a little bit less expensive. But honestly, as I've gotten older and as I look back on Scion, the XB really speaks to me. Now, I think that $17,000 is a little expensive, but I mean, honestly, I think a car like this should be $17,000 today, much less 20 years ago. That's what I'm trying to say there. But I would love to have a car like this, honestly. As much as I'd like a big rear-wheel drive Buick and a Jeep Wrangler, this would be something I would like very much. It's perfect to hop in, shoot down to the grocery store, go to a doctor's appointment, go to work, come back. It's perfect. It is the essence of car. So I love them. I appreciate this one being recommended to me. And the funny thing is that, philosophically speaking, Scion and Toyota kind of painted themselves into a corner. It was a great idea. It's like, hey, we've got these little cars over here in Japan. Why don't we take them, modify them a little bit for the American market? We can create a little sub-brand called Scion, and we can market to the youth. And it really worked. But what happens 4 and 8 years later? Those youth you're chasing, they've now aged. And there's nowhere for them to go, right? Like, if they buy a Toyota and they buy a Corolla or a Prius, and then 8 years later, they've got kids, they move to the Camry, and then they move to the Sienna. Scion, you've got a small car, and they added the two-door, the TC, later on. So your customers that you're generating edge out of you. They age out of you. So what they did with the next generation is they tried to make them a little bigger, a little plusher, a little softer, a little fatter. And specifically the XB, I seem to remember it was hundreds of pounds heavier, but actually smaller inside. And suddenly you're not hitting the youth market either because you're trying to chase people up in age. It's philosophically, Scion is very interesting to me because it seems like a great idea to go for the youth, but there's no what's the next step. And ultimately they just ended up fading away. So let me know what you think about this one, guys. I appreciate y'all being here.